Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Voivod, Synchro Anarchy, out February 11th on Century Media Records. The album has 9 tracks, 48 minutes in length, and this is the band's 15th full-length studio album. They are a Canadian progressive metal band. Now, one of the beauties of this record is the simplicity of structure and the impact that has on the overall design of the album. You look at a record like this that has so many layers, so much texture to it, and when you put a simple structure into that, it allows the overall playability to increase. The record feels a lot shorter than what it is. It's an album that makes the listener stay connected with it, allows the listener to understand exactly what's happening at every single turn, and take all the lessons that you can take from each and every single song and then build up upon them so you can have an overall robust experience. You're still going to lose yourself within this record, that's undeniable, but the album also has the ability to bring you back to that same path, to that same journey, to that same road. So you're never completely out of sight as far as what the destination is all about. Once you move into the soundscape, they didn't recreate the Wake, and I didn't think they were looking at recreating the Wake. They're always looking at improving on the previous records, adding more elements, changing, being creative, and this record is no different. This record really pushes the needle forward as far as what this band is all about, not releasing 2 albums that sound exactly the same. One of the beauties of the sound of this album is that it has shapes. You really feel it and you really see it. When you're listening to this album with quality headphones, you're going to get the full experience of the quality of the audio that's in it. And this audio moves. The sound on this record moves around. It doesn't stay stagnant. You're not going to get one linear approach from song to song, or you're not even going to get a linear approach across several tracks on this album. Each song has its own DNA. Each song has its own style, its own structure, its own design, and it's going to create a much different shape than the previous track and then the track that comes after. So the record is always evolving, it's always morphing, it's always moving, and the sound is moving with it. Now, there's some elements within the soundscape that stay very close to home in terms of the impact that they have, but they change in terms of the atmosphere and the actual sound experience that they give to the record. This is Voivod in its essence. They've always done this, and this album is no different, but I felt like on this record, they start to move some elements a little bit more into the forefront that allow you to feel these changes, these shapes, these forms, perhaps a little bit more clear as far as the listener goes. Now, within the soundscape, there are some elements that were fundamental in creating those shapes, in creating that movement, in creating that sense of growth, that sense of contracting and expanding that you're going to feel with every single track. The first one is the bass. The bass lines on this track, on this record, are phenomenal. Very groovy, but at the same time grounding the record and giving it a little bit of substance, adding something to the robust nature that this record has. Even songs that feel a little bit more flat, a little bit more linear, a little bit more driven, the bass still comes in and adds flavor to how these songs come about. So I was absolutely in love, not just with how much of the bass came into the forefront, but the direct impact that it had on the atmosphere and on the soundscape of this record. The drums feel very balanced throughout the entire album, perhaps one of the more balanced elements that this record has. It grounds the record, it creates a sense of foundation, and allows all the other elements to digest themselves or to exist in a more natural format across each and every single song. So they play a very important role. They play a balanced role, but an important role because it allows some of the things in the periphery that the album has to be a little bit more dynamic, to be a little bit more lively. So I really enjoyed what the consistency that the drums gave to a record like this. The guitars are very eclectic, very diverse, and they are really the force behind this album. This is a guitar-driven album. We have to look at this record from that perspective. You could look at the collective and you could say that the bass, drums, guitars, vocals, everything comes in together in order to create the nuances, in order to create the textures, in order to create the volume, the robust nature of this record, and all of that is true. Everything coming together as one, that's where the strength of the sound, of the experience that this record gives exists. But you can't deny the fact that the guitars play such a predominant role in driving the songs and creating the atmosphere and helping shape how these tracks come about, giving you a sense of movement within the songs and giving you a sense of movement from song to song. So when you look at this record, you have to look at the direct impact that the guitar sound has, how driven they are, how connected with the overall experience, and they're pretty much the motor, the driver, the car, the fuel that transports the soundscape, that transports the atmosphere throughout this entire album. The vocals are very consistent. As consistent are the drums, as consistent are the vocals. And the vocal performance on this record really help create a little bit of depth to the overall sound that exists within this album. They gave warmth to the record. There's one element in the bass that does give some warmth to the overall sound, but the vocals on this record, the fact that they were a little bit deep within the album and they're trying to break through some of the layers, and sometimes they come into the forefront, sometimes dropping a little bit more into that pocket, in that comfort zone, really gives depth and really gives texture to the sound. It helps the sound become better defined. And the vocals really come across uniform in the way they are delivered, and the quality that they offer to the album, and the consistency that they give. I really enjoy the vocal performance throughout the entire record because it helped me navigate the record. It helped me understand the sound, the experience, and what the songs were trying to give me as far as those shapes are concerned. Overall, it's hard to follow The Wake. That album was phenomenal, but this record really allows them to go in a slightly different path, a slightly different direction, and take a lot of the baggage from the previous record and previous records and build upon it. So it's an album that has incredible quality. It has incredible quality of sound, incredible quality of execution, and incredible quality of how you bring all of these elements together, creating an album that, while being layered and thick in texture, still feels very simple to digest towards the listener. Another album that adds to the overall quality that this band has in their discography. Now, as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Synchro Anarchy. The song builds a path, and that path then is trailblazed by the vocals. The drums and bass guide the foundation of this song. The guitars offer more of a diverse approach. They're more eclectic in their nature, and this allows the song to be more dynamic. It gives more life, it gives more energy to the track. But the bass line on this track is absolutely killer. That's something that I gravitated to from the get-go, and I really enjoyed how groovy it was and how melodic it even becomes at times. Now, the vocals help define the journey. They almost become a little bit of the narrator of the path that you're going to take from beginning to end. And the soundscape is phenomenal. It creates movements. A lot of those shapes that I was talking about really are represented well in this track, and how it comes across and how it moves from one side to the other, and it becomes 3D. The song starts to move and grow and morph and contract, and it's alive and well. It has energy, it has a heartbeat, it has a soul. The way it just moves around, this track is magnificent. Next we have Sleeves Off, a more thumping track, a heavier song. It still has energy, it still has a lot of energy, but it feels a little bit more direct in its approach. It doesn't cut corners, it doesn't try to create ebbs and flows, it doesn't try to take you and allow you to lose yourself within the experience. It's more to the point. It's a thumping track. It's thumping because of the drums, it's thumping because of the bass, and it's definitely thumping because of the guitar sound. It has some thickness to it, it has a more driven, thick, direct approach to it that makes this song a little bit easier to understand and easier to gravitate towards. The solo section is phenomenal within this track. It jumps off the track, it breaks the track and it jumps off the track, allowing the song to kind of reset itself within itself. And then the vocals are phenomenal. The chorus is super catchy, and there's a slight change in tone and delivery in that chorus that really allows it to jump into the forefront and add more flavor to the overall song, not just to how it sounds, but how it feels. Last but not least, The World Today. It opens up with a bass line, and it kind of sets the tone for what the entire song is going to be. A track that has a methodic approach. It doesn't move as directly as Sleeves Off, but it also doesn't have the same style of ebbs and flows as Synchro Anarchy. It's a very different track. It has more of a methodic movement. It still has energy, it still has power, but it just feels like it moves a little bit slower. Now, there are some peaks and valleys within this song, specifically going from verses to chorus, but they're not super drastic, or at least the movement, it's not abrupt from one to the other. It makes it a little bit more gradual. And because it makes it more gradual, it takes a little bit away from that roller coaster ride vibe and allows the song to stay methodic all the way through. Another track that has an incredible solo section really changes the feel of the song, and it changes a little bit of the texture and nature of the track itself, but it fits so perfectly well in the design of the song and where it is within the track. It almost gives a movie score vibe. When you listen to the solo section, you think you're listening to a sci-fi movie, you think you're listening to a movie score. That kind of impact ignites, and it gives a little bit extra energy to a track that's very methodic in its structure, very methodic in its approach. This is it. This is Voivod with Synchro Anarchy, out February 11th on Synchro Media Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those, getting back to you. Take care, guys.